So I just want to demonstrate again how easy it is to close the distance in maybe just 2 steps. If I'm here, I go 1, 2, bah!
Yeah, and I'm dead.
Shadowversity.
Greetings, I'm Shad, and Adam Celadin, a world champion knife thrower, has made a response to my video on knife throwing, disagreeing with me on a couple of key points, which I would like to now respond to him and address, basically. Look, he was really respectful, he seems like a really friendly guy, so no shade on Adam. I think, like I said, I think we would get along really, really well. What we are addressing, though, are the specific points he brings up in the video. And so, look, I've watched this video, especially coming from someone with huge amounts of experience. I was ready to take on board anything that he was able to show that I was wrong in context. And he brings up 1 or 2 points that I've certainly considered and will address here. So you should know very clearly, my whole context of the previous video was how useful are knives in combat. Adam seems to think that I'm saying knife throwing is useful across the board, because when he says knife throwing is really useful, he then gives examples that it gets you outdoors, it's great as a hobby and a sport. And
do I think is knife throwing really useful? Yes, I think for sure, because mainly it gets you out of your house, outside, outdoors. You're gonna move. You're gonna learn new techniques, you're gonna meet new people around the world on the competition.
That's not the context of my argument in any measure. A good half of his video is addressing the technique that I was doing. And look, happy to freely admit, I suck at knife throwing. That was actually the point of the montage that we made in the previous video, where I'm showing myself sucking at knife throwing. So yeah, I completely agree.
In fact, that went at the end of the video, but you moved it to the beginning to show people.
Yes, that my skill with knife throwing actually is irrelevant to the points I'm making, because we continue the discussion under the assumption of someone being able to use them effectively. Whenever you throw them, it would land on point, and considering knives in that context, how useful would they be in the context of actually being able to be thrown effectively? And so, yeah, like, that seems to be missed the point. Now, I love that Adam is really passionate about his hobby, his sport. He's a world champion, like I mentioned, and he wants to educate people on what the better techniques are. That's brilliant. But then trying to criticize me that my points are wrong because I was using the wrong technique, when he later goes on to actually say spinning technique is nowhere near as good as no spin technique, which is a bit harder. But then he says that no spin technique is mostly effective from 2 to 6 to 7 meters. So, of course, the whole video, my first one, was in context of proper combat range to justify actually throwing a knife, and anything too short wouldn't be a point. Adam literally says that when you go up to over 6-7 meters, spin technique is usually the one, and he goes like he mentions that in the ranges of like 20 and as far as 30 meters, spin technique is the one that they mostly use, which is I was using this technique poorly, but that is the technique I was using.
You pick the most wrong technique possible, because you picked the full spin throwing. For knife throwing, we can throw accurate on the competitions up to even 25 or 30 meters. Guys are accurate on the target, but that's more with the spin throwing technique.
In my video, I actually was using the correct technique. I was still crap at it, but that is the correct, because he then also says that you can do no spin at up to 20 meters, but it's really difficult. But most people, when they're throwing at 20 to 30 meters, it is spin technique. So half of the video of Adam's one, and I love that he's trying to spread his hobby, better techniques, everything, but is literally irrelevant to the context of the video that I was talking about. So I failed to see why he's saying I'm doing the wrong thing, when at the range that I was throwing, I was actually doing the right technique by the very words of his own video, by his own admission. The next half of the video is talking about effectiveness of range and other things, and we're going to go through point by point. But in the second half of the video, Adam literally agrees to the overall premise of my first video, is that throwing knives are a bit overhyped. Here's the quote.
In one of your points, you're saying that knife throwing is overhyped, and with that, I have to agree. Knife throwing in the video games, it's like one throw, one kill. In the Hollywood movies, the same thing. The guy is throwing, you know, killing everybody right away. So I think this is the bad portrait.
So if the good portion of the first half of the video is not addressing the actual argument I was making about what validates, you know, thrown weapons at a correct range, and the second half is agreeing with a large portion of us saying, I have to say a lot of the arguments in his videos are completely irrelevant, but we'll go through point by point. And this isn't a attack on Adam. I think he's a genuinely friendly, nice guy. We're just going to be disagreeing. And look, he felt perfectly, and he is, it's perfectly valid and justified in making a response video when he thinks I'm wrong and he disagrees with me, so I hope he doesn't begrudge me when I again make a response to him, feeling that he's wrong and expressing my reasons why. And as I am not taking any offense at all, because I actually like healthy disagreement, I think it's fun, I hope he won't take any offense at me disagreeing with him, and I'm going to be going through point by point, breaking this discussion down. So Adam here, look, it's a funny intro, but I think this betrays the fundamental misunderstanding of the video, because the whole point of the montage that is watching here is that I suck.
Wait a minute.
So I'm not sure if he's making a joke, but it seems to be in a response that I said throwing knives suck, and he is now going to address that, you know, they do not suck, when I hope he could understand that I was clearly being sarcastic and flippant in response to I suck at, and, you know, jokes are kind of ruined when you need to explain it, but the context of the joke is that clearly I'm the one who sucks at throwing knives, okay? And when I said throwing knives suck in context of the clip was a comical deflection of my own inadequacies when I'm the issue, not the knives are. So that's the joke. And that wasn't the validation to say throwing knives suck. It was in no measure at all to say the sport of throwing knives sucks, because in the video I say very clearly it's fun. It's a really fun thing to do. We had heaps of fun throwing these knives. I said in the video, throwing knives are a really fun thing. The context of the video is how effective are they in combat. Now, as a combative weapon, they mostly suck. Okay, that very much I agree with, and that's...
Well, when you throw them.
We'll talk about it, because Adam actually, this is where, you know, because at one point he's addressing the technique that I wasn't using, and then another point he agrees with me. There is a stronger sticking point in which we do fundamentally disagree on, and that's their effectiveness in combat. Okay, and so definitely that's going to be a strong point to bring up and talk about, and I've even got outside demonstrations we'll be able to show as well. So, introduction.
Hello, my friends.
Very
Welcome
friendly.
back. If you are here first time, my name is Adam Celadin. I'm 5 times world champion.
I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name.
4 times record holder for Czech.
By the way, tremendous respect for his skill. This guy's very talented in throwing knives, okay? As to how useful that type of technique and talent would be in combat.
Yeah. 4-time record holder. The only record I have 4 of is criminal.
For records and member of International Knife Throwing Hall of Fame. Today I want to respond to Shad from Shad University.
Hello. Thank you for responding. Really, look, I enjoy this back and forth. Unfortunately, I do not get as much time as I'd like to respond to everyone. And the larger my channel grows, the more responses I get. And there's a greater mix of genuine and sometimes very disingenuous ones. I think this one is done in very good faith, okay? And so I love Adam's respect and friendliness. And so this is definitely how you respond, okay? Even if we still disagree, this is certainly the way to do it.
He made video about is knife throwing really useful or practical?
Okay, so useful and practical in combat, all right? Because as I've already shown in the clips from his video, he literally seems to think that I'm saying knife throwing across the board is useless and impractical. As a sport, hobby, it's brilliant, have fun. I genuinely think it's a lot of fun as well. But in combat, that's the most important thing.
I really like Shad. I'm actually a subscriber for
Thank you,
years,
mate.
But in his video, there was a lot of wrong points.
Okay, so if there was a lot of wrong points, we will address them, because I actually think even after watching this video, most of my points are completely valid, especially the ones where he tries to address combat, which I'll explain in the thing. But then a lot of the other points, he is only addressing a very few elements of my video. For instance, the technique, right? When Adam himself, actually, we agree on a lot of fundamental points, like how overhyped it is, and it should not be a primary weapon. Adam also says that in his video.
Could it be a secondary weapon?
As a distraction, okay, as a backup, but in your hand, it's a great secondary. If you throw it and you lose it, I mean,
Well, you got 3 there.
There are reasons why you would be willing to throw it, and you've got backups. Okay, if you've got backups, then maybe, you know, the time it takes to draw out another weapon. It's shocking how quickly someone can close and kill you in that time, which we'll, I guess, address in this video. But as to what I was saying before, I don't think I got a lot of things wrong, and we'll double check it right here, going through the video point by point.
So first of all, let's talk about history of knife throwing, because it's way more complex than you see in the hard.
This is a type of video I actually would genuinely love to see and learn more about. I think some of the examples he gives, they don't nearly go deep enough, nor have the sources to validate a lot of things. I have looked at, you know, a lot of medieval combat over the years, and knife throwing rarely ever comes up at all, okay? It was never used as a primary combat kind of thing. Maybe as a backup, because look, throwing weapons does come up, even throwing swords in one of the sources, okay? It comes up now and then, throwing things, even throwing pummels, right? So it was used, but in the context of how they're used, sometimes as novelty, last ditch, surprise things, but never as a primary technique, primary weapon. And that's what I was addressing. Remember in my first video, I was talking about the classic knife throwing warrior, where his main weapon is the knife throwing, and that is the impractical, not, you know, useful thing that I was trying to debunk.
What separates them from the war darts and stuff like that?
Range, ease of use, and also versatility, because war darts, he mentions plumbata, so they'll come up a bit, and maybe I'll address that point when the plumbata comes up, because there are other thrown weapons that have more uses, more lethal, more versatile.
Hollywood movies or in the video games. It actually comes from the stone throwing. First, it was just the ordinary stone. After, they specially polished them.
Look, I think this is an oversimplification, because it wasn't like stone throwing was bad, so we purposely went to sharpen the stones to make better. No, like there's a lot of other ways to make stone throwing more effective, like the sling. The sling was actually a surprisingly lethal weapon in antiquity. In actual fact, a slung stone is vastly more effective than a thrown dagger. More range, a lot more velocity as well, and so. Yeah, I think his historical summary here, again, very oversimplified.
It was very, very useful skill in past, before the firearms came.
It was a useful skill before firearms came. See, this I completely disagree with, because one, there was a vast range of ranged weapons that would achieve or serve the role that the firearms would have served before firearms came about. And so what is the firearm replacing that the knife was doing that the bow couldn't do, and you were using the knife over top? And so saying knife's really useful until firearms? No, like anything that the firearm would serve to replace the knife, crossbow, bow, like thrown darts, slings, all those things could do what you might want a knife to do and more. So I think this is a poor representation of knives used throughout history, and a bit of a misunderstanding about what might actually affect their utility historically. I'm not saying people never use them. I'm sure they're like the hobby, the sport and everything. And also, if you have something small, you could always try throwing it. And so I'm sure people just did it for fun. But in terms of useful combat application historically, very few examples of it. It happened, of course, right? But as a primary thing, and how useful is it versus, like, would you pick it if you had other options of other weapons? You know, that's where you run into issues.
Because if you can imagine that you were able to pick it up, any hidden weapon that you was on your body, and throw it, and after that follow up with other attack or run away, it was very practical.
Throw it, then follow up with other attacks. If this is your only weapon, your follow-up attacks would be unarmed, and then run away. If you didn't throw it, you wouldn't have to run away. You could follow up with many attacks with the knife itself, especially if you're in close range. Close range is going to be the sticking point. I actually feel throwing knives in close range is a particularly bad idea. We'll explain and show.
It was very practical.
Look at the arm distance, let's go. That's like a metre and a half.
The perspective of the camera is throwing things a bit, because it's got one of those lenses that stretches out the thing. I actually think is about 2 meters, 3 meters at most, but that is that is melee range. That is not like a range in which an opponent with a melee weapon, they can hit you in that range. So you're getting no valid advantage of throwing it, okay? Because you think, oh, I can hit you. No, they can hit, like that. This action there is enough time for them to lunge forward and hit, all right? So you're disarming yourself. You could try and land a hit and also block, defend, parry some way and get a hit in, right? Without losing your weapon. The only advantage would be running away. But then you're losing your weapon, and then if they close still on you. So if you had other weapons and your intention was to run away, then maybe last ditch, throw it, try and do some damage, and then run. But we also tested that outside, and trying to run away at that range while still getting a throw off, I was closing on Oz very easily. So Adam is trying to say it works really effectively. It's the opposite. Like when I say opposite effective, like it's not even adequate. It actually puts you in a worse situation than if you just didn't throw it and used it for defense and attack in some way. I freely admit I am not an experienced knife thrower, but I have studied melee combat, and that's the context in which we're putting knife throwing into, okay? And in terms of distance, the amount of time it takes to close, to attack, to what distance you can manage to close in a very short time, I have a lot of experience in, and I've studied many different types of weapons, and I think that is a key point of understanding, research, and experience that Adam is lacking in, especially when he is trying to validate throwing knives to be effective in such close range. So close range in which this is melee range. It's not even like there's melee range and there's long range. And when I say long range, it's in the context that like you can use a ranged weapon to hit the opponent and they can't hit you still, okay, right? And if throwing knives only retain a high level of utility, when I say utility, ability to hit the target or enemy effectively, and if their only ability is to maintain that in such close range, they're effectively not a ranged weapon then.
Of course, there is way more about history of knife throwing, but today I want to show you mainly the action part, the useful and the practical. And now I want to talk about good knives versus bad knives, because for your video chat, you picked the most horrible knives possible.
All right, happy to concede on this. I haven't done endless research on what the best throwing knives are. I just wanted to grab ones that would work. These ones work perfectly well for the demonstration that we're doing in the video. The question is, if I use different knives, would that have changed my analysis? No, it wouldn't, because the analysis was, if you're using knives in any way effectively, that you could throw them reliably and point always landing on the target, are they good in combat? And so the type of knife is irrelevant to that context, because you switch out the knife to a better knife, the context is still the same. You're just throwing them, they're landing effectively on the target. How effective are they in combat? It's not to say Adam's information isn't useful, like it's really good to know what are the best throwing knives and everything like that, but to bring them up in such a way to say I'm saying something wrong in my video, I never said these were the best knives. I said they were good knives, and I actually still, I think these are great. They have a great balance to them. I've held many weapons in my life. These feel great in the hand. In terms of how well do they throw, well, that's where Adam, of course, has the experience, but I can definitely throw them like this, and Adam was trying to say that it's hard. Granted, I wouldn't want to wrap my hands around them, so maybe that's the point where, because in no spin techniques, Adam is throwing with a finger on the back like that, and so he would definitely know which knives work better for no throw. I happily concede his authority on this point, and yeah, listen to Adam about that, but my point is that does this impact what I was actually saying in my video? And I don't think it does.
Now one of the most important parts for combat throwing.
Okay, this is where we get to the good stuff.
Whatever, you pick the most wrong technique possible, because you pick the full spin throwing.
So, I picked the most wrong technique possible for combat knife throwing. Well, I already kind of mentioned the technique that we're using is irrelevant because the context was under the assumption that whatever technique you're using, you're throwing them perfectly well enough to land point first on the target. I think there was one thing. If you use spin technique, it's harder to get it going more lethal in. All right, and so in combat throwing, I will happily concede to his point here that no spin technique seems to have the points towards the target on a longer period of time, which gives a higher chance of the point going deeper, which gives higher chance of lethal injury. So to that, I would concede and happily agree, except he then goes on to say no spin technique's main utility is in 2 to 6 meters. And when you go further than that, like from 10 to 20 meters, unless you're super talented and train heaps to do no spin technique on the really high ranges, it's mostly spin technique. Here's when he says it.
For no spin technique, like I said, the most useful or the practical distances are from 2 up to 6-7 meters, and right after that it's more about the skill, and it can be also done. So 10, 15, even 20 meters no spin, it's possible. For knife throwing, we can throw accurate on the competitions up to even 25 or 30 meters. Guys are accurate on the target, but that's more with the spin throwing technique.
And so if no spin technique is the better combat technique for knife throwing, but is only mainly useful up to 6-7 meters at most, well, then that really invalidates, because yes, you might have a chance of it landing in the target, but the range is the biggest disagreement and issue I have with Adam's video here, because in everything that he's talking about here is mostly in the context of in crazy close distance, okay? 6 meters is very close distance. And he gives some examples of longer distance, but then that really invalidates something that we'll get to in order. So that looks 4 meters from the target there, all right? Because just looking at the perspective of the camera and stuff, and that's so close.
Because if you gotta move one step forward,
You gotta move.
you gotta move.
It keeps coming
It
back.
keeps going up, and this isn't the only time he says it.
If you gotta move, then no.
Weapons should be very useful without the necessity to always move.
Your weapon requires
But
you
look,
to flee.
he can use them not moving. Clearly, it's just sorry if anyone has seen my content, the you gotta move thing is not the first time someone's.
I gotta move, okay? It's gonna under rotate, and if I will move back, it's gonna over rotate.
Okay, so it seems like he's actually validating some of my criticisms about the spin technique, and this is what, and he's saying spin technique bad. That's why no spin technique is good. But then he goes on to further say that when you're at higher ranges, we're up to like 10 meters, 20 meters, and 30 meters. Spin technique is the one that's mostly done unless you're super talented. If spin technique is going to be the most common technique used at those ranges, Adam is actually validating my criticism that it's going to be really difficult to measure the distance because he's actually showing even himself. I'm not sure if he's so talented that he can just purposely have it not hit and then he'd get it to hit. But my point about, when we're just doing casual discussion in the other video, about knowing the distance to get the spin rotation correctly to hit the target would be a very difficult thing to calculate, and that is a limiting factor if spin technique is the one that you need to use. And Adam does mention it in the longer ranges, that is, spin technique is the most common one. What he's holding, right? How much of an edge does that knife actually have? That's a tiny edge. It's only got an edge down to there, and then the rest is blunt. I'd almost not even call those knives as a result. A knife actually is supposed to have an edge. Those are like pointed metal things.
Maybe the technique for no spin requires you to have no point at the...
No, he did have a different knife, okay, which looked like a knife without any, sides to it, that he was doing no spin technique with. But it's interesting. These are the knives that he specifically uses to validate the utility of knives versus armor, because those are heavy, chunky, very robust pointed knives. It looks like it has no taper, and then they only taper at the top to get a really solid point, which then strengthens that point, which makes them have a chance to get through mail. And he references another video which I have watched and stuff. And so if this doesn't validate his demonstrations, if you need an ultra specific knife to have high chance of getting through armor, that almost invalidates the demonstrations of how effective knives are through armor if this is such a specific, different type of knife that most people wouldn't be using for throwing. Look, if you're a dedicated throwing person, knife dagger person, maybe you would use those, but that's a crap knife just in any other context apart from throwing. I'm hesitant to even call it a knife.
It's a lot of metal for such a smallly offensive edge.
Yeah. So interesting thing to consider.
You don't need to know your distance from the target. You can literally stand anywhere. You can be super close, like here. There is
That is super close.
some threat in front of me, like guy with a machete or something like that. I can create a little bit distance, so he can't actually reach me with my machete.
Oof. Oof. This comment here shows a very big lack of understanding about weapon-based combat and stuff. He said if he's at that distance, the guy with the machete can't hit him. Oh, absolutely he can. Like, one lunge forward and he'll be in range to hit, okay? And that is so darn quick. Like, here's an example that we showed outside.
Thing is, in this range, this is melee range, right? I don't even need a step and I'll be able to hit him, okay? Right?
See, like, I can't defend against you when I've thrown them, but even now I'm just...
You have knives and you can try and defend. From here to where Oz is, that's 5 meters. We have a measuring tape on the ground pointing us out. Now, this range, you might think, is pretty darn far and is range combat. This is not that far outside of melee threat. And so if I wanted to hit Oz from here, it would take maybe 2 steps. Just 1, 2 hits. Right? That is not hard to close the distance at all. In actual fact, to get the benefit of range, what we're saying, you need more distance than that, because this is essentially still effective melee threat range.
So, like, to think that that is a safe, range distance where your opponent can't hit you if they're using something like a machete is absolutely categorically wrong. And we're looking at if the person was standing at the range that the target is, okay? That's 3 meters by the look of it. That is 1 lunge and you're in, okay? Let alone continue follow-up strikes and further lunges and stuff. That is categorically, absolutely, indefensibly incorrect, that statement.
But I have my knife ready, like here, or in my hand, like, hey guys, stop,
All right.
stop.
All right, see all that? Hey guys, stop. The guy's closed and hits you, okay? Or even this, ready?
But I have my knife ready, like here, or in my hand, like, hey guys, stop.
So from this point, from there to the point where you see him pulling back, if I was in combat and I saw him do that, that's go time. That's lunge, all right? And what I'm talking about, like in terms of speed, ready? You could close the distance.
Stop.
Okay, you've hit him by that. Look, like in this distance, you might be able to hit him before he even releases, but at most, like, he would be throwing it, the knife would be there or something. You could easily strike his hand as it's moving, or any number of things, okay, which could totally wreck the knife thrower in that thing. Like, it's literally bang. Like, that's not even half a second almost. It's like, you see it, bang. But also, especially a thrust, if you had the weapon presented forward, all right, if someone is standing where the target is, all right, you can present the weapon at least 1 meter to 1.5 meters in front of you still from where your feet are. Okay, it seems like he doesn't understand the actual threat range that you have with a weapon and the measure, like what is, in measure, what's out of measure and things like that. Because if I was standing right there where the target is, I could still present my blade and I'd only be 0.5 meter or 1 meter from even connecting with him. And that's just 1 lunge. So you're just there, bang, you could almost strike him without moving your back leg at that range.
You can throw it, run away.
You would already be hit. the special, like, I was just talking about the action of pulling back and doing that, but the full action of throwing, they're closed and you've been struck.
Or you could also follow up with other attack. You could have like a side blade or something.
Okay, so follow up with another attack. Maybe, but this is the thing, okay? Would you be better served just holding on to the knife and having 2 weapons? Like, because you would, like, the action of trying to pull out another weapon while they're attacking you, it leaves you, like, you could still try and deflect with 1 weapon, but you're still quite, dangerously open because the action of actually grabbing whatever, a weapon you have. You're also focusing on something other than the combat. There's a lot of problems and dangers that you expose yourself to in trying to draw another weapon when the opponent's already closed.
Like that and continue with that, but definitely throw or run away.
Okay, throw and run away, so no combat, all right? We tried that as well. Now, look, Oz isn't the best throwing things stuff, but he genuinely tried to run away. The thing is, though, the action to throw, all right? The time it takes to throw is plenty enough time for your opponent to close. And so you can't throw it and then run away. No, it's throw and you're attacked, okay? The moment when you're trying to run, you're already hit. So you don't have that at this range. No chance do you have that option to run away. You have to be throw while you're running. So as soon as you see him go to close, you have to be moving back at that point. If you do not move at that point and you are stationary to do a throw, you're going to get hit. You have to run, and this is the thing. Unless you're doing full sprint in the other direction, you will not outrun them. They've tested this with police officers and everything like that. As soon as you even turn while you're running to try and do any action, you slow down, and a committed attacker with a sword can run full pelt at you, you will get attacked. So unless you're committed to legging it and not doing any offensive action, there's no way to avoid getting hit, all right? Apart from actually blocking and doing something defensively. I'm talking about just trying to outrun them. You can't do it if you're going to try and do any... And remember, the discussion is knife throwing as a primary weapon with nothing else, okay? But even in the previous video, we said if you combine it with other things, you could use it as a distraction or a last-ditch attack. Like if you needed to hit someone in which you couldn't close the distance in time and you just had to throw, yeah, there's a place for... We're not saying there's no uses at all, but as a primary weapon, they're pretty rubbish.
You don't have to stand at one place. You can literally move.
You're already hit. You're already hit. Like, this is the problem with just throwing at stationary targets and not looking at this in a combative situation, all right? This kind of comes up when we were discussing archery use in combat and stuff. When you're throwing at targets so much, just the concept to consider what the enemy is doing. This comes up in martial arts when you have a compliant opponent and you're not practicing techniques against a resisting opponent. You're like, oftentimes all these techniques that a lot of the Mick dojos teach and everything are against non-resisting opponents, and when they're actually trying against even someone who's untrained who just resists these techniques, the techniques suck, because as soon as you go up against someone who's resisting and trying to hit you back, it puts it in a whole new context. And that is exactly what we're seeing here in Adam's video. He's talking about as if the opponent is doing nothing and just going to stand there and take it. That's an awful way to discuss knife throwing in combat. And that's the discussion right now. There's a knife throwing in combat, and it's under the consideration that the guy's just steady. No, like you can throw and move back and then no, you throw, you're already hit. You're already banged. Like throwing is done now. It's over.
You could put a challenge to him, since he's the master, like he's got 4 world records in throwing. What if you said to him, hey, get one of your friends to try and chase you around with like a foam sword while you throw foam things at him, see how it goes? Yeah,
like that'll be a fun thing for him to try out. I would want him to find someone who knows something about sword fighting. But the thing is, people then say, I got you to throw at me, and you know nothing about knife throwing. But you didn't need to know anything about knife throwing, because we were assuming that his throwing and whatever hits would be a lethal or a damaging hit. Well, that's the assumption we're making.
To be fair, though, I did hit you quite a few times.
You did hit me. Like, if you know how to just aim something, okay. But because swordsmanship techniques, right? You need a proper committed attacker. Like I've seen people try and do nunchucks versus knife, and the person that they're using a knife is this stationary, non-aggressive opponent. Just like, no, get someone to rush you with a friggin' knife with intent to jab it in your neck and see how well you do with nunchucks then, all right? Like a fully aggressed opponent who was happy to take a few nunchuck hits on the arm and just, right? See how that works out then. And so if Adam was going to do a test about knives versus swords, and his opponent needs to be committed, aggressive, and then test it out and see how well he goes. And I think he'll find, even with how talented he is, and he's very talented, I'm not saying he isn't, especially in the range in which is showing here, no, you're not going to be able to just throw, move back and throw, not a chance.
I was not watching.
Yeah, I know he's demonstrating that you can throw knives at any distance with no throw technique, but he was also kind of trying to demonstrate you could you can follow up with a second throw when you move back, and it's like, no, you won't even get the second throw off if the attack is committed.
At all. From short ranges, it's very, very practical.
That is where we fundamentally, massively disagree. All right, so this is where we're going to go the longer demonstration outside, because we tested this, and we'll show you what we did.
To demonstrate, I have Oz here to help me out. Now, Oz is going to be the theoretical dagger throwing person. And I have a but we're throwing daggers today. The problem that I was saying, there's very little advantage that a knife thrower will get out of this range if I can still close the distance and hit him within the frame of time that he has to actually throw. And so you can maybe try and move back a bit, right? But I'm going to be committed to try and hit you, and we'll see, because the true advantage of range is be able to strike someone without them being able to hit you. And so that's going to be a bit of the test. 1, 2, 3. Like, we're going to go under the assumption and pretend that Oz is a master dagger. Whatever he throws is going to land on target, and so regardless of technique, spin, whatever. And so I would have gotten a dagger solid in the gut, but he would be dead. Well, this is where I was saying that the dagger might have some redeeming features if you use it in your offhand. So I just want to demonstrate again how easy it is to close the distance in maybe just 2 steps. If I'm here, I go 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, and I'm dead.
And I deflected that with the sword then.
Yeah.
So the other point is that you can defend against knives that are thrown at you.
Yep.
Alright? Guard, hands, even with the sword. I think the point is pretty much shown so far, about range at least, is that this is not effective long range combat. This is still definitely melee. Now, we've been comparing the fairest situation for the knives in this. I'm unarmored, not wearing armor, and I'm using a single weapon, okay? Imagine if I was using a shield. And yes, we will try that.
Yeah, they failed both. One went too high, one went too low.
I'm so confident that a shield is going to be so devastatingly effective against throwing knives, I'm not even going to wear the helmet in this, okay?
Oh.
Because a dagger could pierce and maybe poke through a shield somewhat, but in terms of actually hitting me, when I can just put up this defense. So, ready?
Yep.
Nathan, give us a count.
3, 2, 1. I got your leg.
You're dead. I'll trade a leg.
How far is he? Because if I'm throwing from here, why don't I just, instead of going like that and drop it?
That's a very good point. Like, when you get this close, you'd be better served fighting, like, because this thing, gentlemen, he said that the knives' main effective range is about up to 6 meters max, but in a lot of his tests he's standing this close. This is melee range, and to use throwing daggers this close, you're just disarming yourself. If a mistake happens, if you're a master, so even if you're a master, if you miss accidentally or just don't get a lethal hit, you've disarmed yourself, and it's a terrible idea. You'd be better off fighting with them in melee, not throwing. But the thing is, in this range, this is melee range, right? I don't even need a step and I'll be able to hit him, okay? Right?
See, like, I can't defend against you when I've thrown them, but even now I'm just...
You have knives and you can try and defend.
Yeah.
So you'd say throwing knives at this range is rather stupid, unless, for some of the reasons I said in the original video, maybe for a distraction, okay? Last option. And if I'm fighting someone here and he can't close the distance in time, you could just last ditch, just throw the weapon.
Doesn't make much sense to me.
So the gentleman's point was that knives could be pretty lethal in the ranges that he was throwing, and I hope we've demonstrated that in the range that he was throwing, that's a terrible idea, a genuinely terrible idea. Even if you get a lethal strike, you're not going to instantly kill them unless you get a head hit, and they will still close the distance and have a much higher chance of doing a lethal hit against you. Even up to 6 meters, you will close and get it. So shield might be a bit unfair. What about single sword? The thing is though, single sword will actually probably give me more advantages than two-handed long sword, because I can try and block with this hand. Yes, I'm using Imperious. Look at this beautiful sword.
Very sexy, very sleek.
From my novel, you can buy it from Kalamazoo. Links in the description. But so even single sword, if we go to full range and I want to close the distance, I can easily put up a guard to protect my head. And if your only option is double death, that's a terrible thing. But anyway, so try and. Nathan, give us a countdown.
3, 2, 1. Got you both times at the same spot. Right under the arm.
Right under the arm?
Yeah.
So,
It still won't be lethal, I'll be dead.
you'll be dead. That's not what you... Like, you don't want a weapon that can not defend yourself, and it's especially a weapon that leaves you completely disarmed.
If you put your helmet back on, I'll aim for the head.
Like, it would be better for you to just use them like normal daggers. If I charge you like this, like, then he can offend him. So now, see? Like, he can defend, he can attack.
It's called the blender move.
If I was being serious, right, I wouldn't charge him then, because then I know he's not going to throw. So maybe if I was like this. There you go, you distracted me and then threw one. I think we've got the point.
Yeah.
So in short ranges, okay, I think Adam goes on later to say about dodging, okay? And I agree, in short ranges, much harder to dodge, all right? But then he then goes on to try and validate that you can still use throwing knives over much longer distances, and when you go over those long distances, much easier to dodge, okay? And he seems to think that because he proved that it's so hard to dodge in this short distance, that dodging is now an irrelevant point to bring up at these longer distances, and because he can hit his target at a longer distance, therefore knife throwing over long distances is valid and useful. It's like, no, over those longer distances, that knife is a slower moving object and sometimes needs to arc through the air. That is way easier to dodge. And my criticism about how effective knives are and longer distance, and we're talking about anything longer than 20 meters. By the way, 20 meters is a, like, depressingly, when I said, like, if the best distance you have out of a throwing weapon is only 20 meters, that is a crap ranged weapon. All right. You want something that's effective up to 30 meters minimum, even further. And when we get into like the ranges that many weapons could reach, like slings, like a good thrown plumbutter, but when you talk about war darts, which are big javelin-like darts, the distances that they can reach, and also, of course, bows and archery, like 30 meters, 20 meters, that is pathetically short range, all right? And if you're saying these are the max range that you can get out of knives, these are uniquely ineffective ranged weapons because remember, how easy it is for opponents to close the distance. There's a thing in police officers that, like, anything within, is it 10 meters, Oz?
Already running at you.
If someone is within 10 meters and already running at you with a knife, you won't be able to draw in time and kill them, all right? Because when someone's committed and running at you, they can close that distance shockingly fast, okay? And so if the effective range, true deadly range of knives is within 6 meters, holy crap, that sucks. Like, genuinely sucks. Now, going back onto the dodging point, which, well, actually, I'll wait until he brings up dodging and then we'll address it. You're already dead. I'm sorry. See what he's doing here, right here, all right? He's facing off against an opponent, supposedly. And if I saw someone with only a knife like that, I would be rushing him. They are like that'd be so difficult for them to protect their hand. He's presenting his arm forward. I would just strike at the arm, one lunge, just bang. And so, ready? I've already hit. Okay, like, you would have to be avoiding moving back drastically, and I would be lunging, hitting, and all of this is horrible to do in an actual fight against anyone using really any type of weapon, even another knife if they're committed and lunging at you, right? Holy crap, you wouldn't be able to stand there like that at all. It's like he's fighting against a stationary target, which funnily enough he is. This action right here, even when he goes to hit, like, they've closed and already hit you. And then turning and running after that, it doesn't work like that.
So maybe you already noticed knife throwing is getting way more practical now, right?
It's actually quite the opposite. A lot of what Adam is saying here is validating my criticism against knives, especially he says himself, if we'll get to it because I've already watched the video, he says the main effective ranges for no spin and just like this is between 2 and 6 and 7 meters. If their most effective range is that's crap, and that is actually not range distance. That is melee distance. Throwing knives effectiveness in combat in that range is very poor. Now, sorry, we will get to the dodge thing because I'll address it there.
In my opinion, it was never primary weapon. It was always secondary. Like.
Well, I agree it would never want to be a primary weapon. In terms of secondary, as a backup, as a distraction, yes, but I don't know if it's talking about just as a backup or distraction.
Asset for the distraction.
Distraction? Okay, good.
Stuff like that. And you also saying in your video that it's easy to dodge,
okay.
Right? You can tell me if I'd be standing like this close, can you dodge this?
The question is that the distance that we were demonstrating in the video? No, I was standing minimum 8 to 10 meters from the target. And at that distance, I still hold the opinion it's much easier to dodge knives. And that's about at the minimum distance where I would comfortably say you have a chance of dodging if you really try, and it's much easier. Shorter distances, then it'll be much difficult. But anything longer gets exponentially easier to dodge. Okay?
You tested on me and I dodged them each time.
Yeah, it wasn't hard. Like if you had someone ready and because this is the thing. If someone is just aiming for your center line, okay, from the time they go to there and then release, and then the time it takes to land over, definitely 8 meters, to do that, you're gonna displace the knife for, if it's there, and it'll avoid hitting vital organs, especially if you run and you're dodging like that. But in close ranges, I agree, it's very hard to dodge anything at super close range, including the person attacking you with a sword. And so this dodging argument is completely irrelevant to what we were saying in the previous video. But then there's this other point about, okay, the actual exchange. Now, we already have shown in the demonstration that there are ways to at least protect the head and it exposes your body, and I fully admit, with a solid, heavy knife, especially the type that is throwing right here, get it in the chest or gut, good chance of, potentially doing a lethal wound, but is that going to incapacitate them instantly to prevent them doing a lethal wound against you, which has got very high chances. And by the way, that lethal wound, that's only if it hits a vital organ. If it misses any vital organ, gets hit on the ribs and doesn't penetrate deep enough or anything, they're going to have a very uncomfortable cut, but they'll survive, and you've disarmed yourself. Or you have a single knife to defend in your offhand, or you have to reach for another knife, and in the process of trying to draw another knife, you're slashed to pieces, okay? So at best, you would get a double kill, almost. You would get them in a lethal hit, but they hit you, you're dead, unless you somehow get them instant stopping, through the eye and kill them completely. But he says that's mostly a Hollywood myth. Adam even says this in his video, where this is where he acknowledges that knives are overhyped and that the one throw, one kill is mostly a myth. I agree, completely agree. But that's the only way you could stop the opponent from killing you in this range. And if you can't do a one-hit, one kill to stop them, and then you only have knives to defend yourself and they have anything more substantial, you're dead. You can't stop that. And so I agree. It would be very hard to dodge within that range. But it also means you can't dodge your opponent's attack either. If they've just had anything with a decent cutting capacity and just do a full-down strike, you're dead. or incapacitated. In the shoulder, it's going to cut down there.
You also mentioned that range for knife throwing, it's also very small. And that's very not true, because for knife throwing, we can throw accurate on the competitions up to even 25 or 30 meters.
That's very short range in regards to medieval ranged weapons, okay? A lot of other weapons can do that range and much better, with more lethality, more speed, and everything.
We can throw accurate on the competitions up to even 25 or 30 meters. But for the practical and the most combat scenarios, I think the short distances are most practical.
Look at some of the ranges that Todd from Todd's Workshop does with his war darts. He's done a recent video where he's talking about all these different darts. Todd is such a great channel. Go check him out, guys. Please do. Because he tests out some awesome stuff. And he makes these great things as well. So, yeah, check out Todd if you haven't already. Check out seriously, the the dart video where he throws all different types of darts, okay? And he shows different ways of using plumbata and things. And he shows one great one, and we'll get to the plumbata thing, about what you can do with plumbata that you can't do with knife, is that you can throw them at really awkward angles and they will auto-correct to get the point forward. And so he even has a handful, and he does an underarm throw. And when he does the underarm throw of like a bunch of plumbata, they're all guaranteed and stick in the target. Can you do that with knives? Not a chance. Oh my goodness.
And we can actually compare it to the plumbata, because you also mentioned it in your video, but plumbata was never used for accuracy for the closer distances.
Never used for accuracy or closer distances. This is where cite historical source to back up that claim, because that is a very broad statement that is just incorrect. Of course you could use it in close range and for accuracy. I don't know where on earth is drawing that from.
And if something is accurate at a long distance,
It'd be pretty...
it'll be more accurate at a short distance.
Yeah. And one of the ways is like holding a handful when you get close to an opponent, and you can throw them accurately, especially at that close. Definitely they can be used in close range, but he's also acknowledging that they're really good at long range as well.
It was mainly used in the units. They throw it at the one time, and it was mainly so the soldiers would raise...
Yeah, one of the ways is to throw them up in an arc over shields, but there was a lot of other ways you can implement them as well. And to say that they're like just flat out they were never used in any other way, you should... Well, I've learned from my own experience, because I've been caught in this in the past, is avoid categorical overbroad statements like that. Because, of course people could use them close range. You think no one did historically?
Raise their shield, and it would make them vulnerable on their torso. So for the bow archers, it was way easier right after that. So plumbata, it could be actually compared with a knife, because I could as well throw randomly at the 35 meters at some unit and cause some damage, or make them raise the shield.
Wait. You would need to be able to throw them reliably in a long arc with the point down. Okay, the point about plumbata is that they're fletching, so they'll always autocorrect to be point down. I've seen Adam actually shows like he throws up to, I think, 20 meters at most, but he has to arc the knife in a no spin technique. It's really difficult, and he says it's really difficult to do. And to do that in a very high arc, I doubt very heavily that you could do that consistently, reliably, just as well as a plumbata. Not a chance. No hope.
And if you are wondering, for no spin technique...
Did I just go into my, the danger of making categorical statement? Because I just said it, not a chance, not a hope. But I think that's more justified to make categorically that. But I was I think when even reconsidering it, to be able to arc a throwing knife to get point down as reliably and consistently as a plumbata, it's just, no, that's an objective. The plumbata is designed to do it, where knives, no.
Like I said, the most useful or the practical distances are from 2 up to 6-7 meters.
All right, that's where he says the most useful and practical distances for no spin is
raise the shield. And if you are wondering, for no spin technique, like I said, the most useful or the practical distances are from 2 up to 6-7 meters. And right after that, it's more about the skill. And it can be also done. So 10,
but very difficult,
15,
as he mentions.
Even 20 meters no spin.
Even
possible,
20 meters, but
it takes
20 meters is rubbish distance. Like when you're talking about historical combat.
It's great skill to learn that. It's not
you could probably, seriously, with a dedicated person charging you, right? At most you'll get 2, but the first one will be very easy to dodge at that range. And the second one, I'm not sure you'll be able to get the second one in time before they hit you.
Right, but it's possible. But for the practical and the most combat scenarios, I think the short distances are most practical, because it's very hard.
He says the short distances are most practical. No, short distances are the highest chances of you getting your head chopped off.
It's the most practical for the person attacking you.
Yeah, that's
what they're trying to do.
Adam is a really friendly guy, okay? And this is no criticism, but this is genuinely awful advice in terms of combat. If you're like, and look, we don't recommend anyone fight with melee, medieval weapons and everything, but like, if you're in a situation and someone has a weapon against you and you got it throwing knives, do not throw them in that close range, okay? Use them, because if you actually hold on to them, you can use them defensively in some measure, all right? Don't disarm yourself unless you're guaranteed to kill them, but it's very unlikely to do that in that throw. It's just, no.
For you to dodge something like this.
So that's about 8 meters, I reckon.
6 meters.
You reckon that might even be 6? It might.
6, yeah.
I would say 8.
How many paces is the question, because one full pace as big as you can do is usually a meter.
Yeah.
It's like 5 or 6.
And that's about 10 now. And look, beautiful throw, right? But look at how much that arcs through the air, right? Now, in terms of ability to dodge, any like half-competent person who is aware and watching that knife coming, I would almost say anyone would be able to dodge that, unless Adam predicts the direction they're going to dodge and throws it at so instead of aiming here, he aims there, and you accidentally dodge into it. Because if he aims center and you see him throw, you just move a little bit. And like, I know it's slow mo. Is it actually slow motion?
It is, yeah.
Only a little bit though, because that is
It's like 8% speed.
that arcs through the air, and even if we try and account for the speed adjustment, that's a lot of time to move out of the way. And also, distance, right? At this distance, he needs to arc the knife to get it to land. And so if he's aiming at someone who is at the distance of the target, and then if they're actually charging them, the amount of time it takes for the knife to reach that distance, they've already moved so much forward that they would have dodged underneath the arc and it would have missed them completely. Okay? Like, this isn't like an arrow or a bullet that is able to travel over a very large distance at a more even, consistent height. Okay? This has very inconsistent height over that distance, and as soon as you change the distance and you're running towards them, you've messed up the throw. And you wouldn't be able to, like, you take, 3-4 meter step forward, and the knife is now going to go above your head or something like that, or any number of things. So that's a massive issue as well.
Yeah, and the plombarda and arrow, they keep their offensive edge forwards at all times, whereas this has to...
It's arcing like that. And so at the halfway point, the knife point isn't even pointing towards the opponent. Okay, no, at a halfway point, it is pointing. Okay, it's pointing mostly forward. Okay. All right, so now he like near the garden bed, and he's about a couple meters back from the chair, different angle, and so that's at most maybe 15 meters. It looks like. All right, that's a massive arc. If they're charging you, that first throw is not going to land because they are already easily 5-10 meters away from what you've been aiming at from when you let go of the knife.
But a short spear.
Anything that, like an arrow, like even a rock from a sling would have better chances of maintaining height over that distance.
You also said that shurikens maybe couldn't hurt you, right? That the piercing point is very small. You again comparing it with the Hollywood shuriken, those are super small, even smaller than this one, and power it's very, very low.
Okay, I'm not sure if he's remembering my video, because in my video I mentioned bigger shuriken, and I was even trying to demonstrate what they looked like with these, okay? And I said that they would be more lethal. They specifically have very oftentimes small points that will not penetrate nearly deeply enough, even though they're easy to throw. All right, if you say, what if you get a really big ninja star? Because then you're basically increasing the weight to get like points everywhere, and by the weight of the weapon will determine how much you can carry and also how much room they take up. So I actually think throwing knives are superior to ninja stars. It just takes a little bit more skill to learn, but once you have the skill, all power to you. So I say the point that is saying in his video, but the context of his video is trying to correct me in the thing that I'm saying the same thing actually. And then he ignores the actual criticism I had about the real video. Then what's the actual point? Because instead of having spike, you can actually just separate those spikes and have individual knives anyway, and you have more ammunition. And when you have one like this, like that's got, say, spikes in every direction, right? it's just like this is one that weighs 4 times more than if you separate it, and it's just extra cumbersome, harder to carry, harder to hold safely, everything like that.
Harder to throw too.
Like large shuriken is friggin' it's a crap weapon. It's dumb. You could achieve vastly as much by separating those spikes, have individual knives. You still have all the problems with the knives thing, the criticisms I have, but you don't you don't have all the additional problems you have with the shuriken. So I'm sorry, like these points about what Adam's saying about the shuriken, I totally disagree. I think these are actually very bad arguments in terms of trying to justify their utility. Because look at the size of shuriken that he gets to.
It's going bigger and bigger.
See, already, like, that's 2 knives. You could separate each kind of angle and get 2 knives, and you have 2 throwing ones, if you're good enough.
So you can imagine that this actually can cause serious damage.
Yeah, I acknowledge the bigger type you could, but that's still very impractical.
You can see this one would penetrate within a few inches.
See, shuriken, actually, I disagree with about the penetration thing, because the very nature of their throwing is spinning, okay? So instead of, like, the no-spin technique, Adam is right, that would be more lethal because it has more energy moving forward and wouldn't be dissipated in like a downwards part. But a shuriken, so pretend that this is like a shuriken, right? As it spins, okay, there's a lot of downwards angle. And so as it hits the target, it's actually moving more down than it is forward. And so the penetration would not near be as strong as something that was moving forward with actual energy, not with a downwards rotation, because that downwards rotation would get stuck and caught.
And after that, you can have even something like this.
I'm sorry. That is just stupid. That is so, like, I'm talking about the shuriken. That size of shuriken is just so impractical that it's a stupid thing to even try and argue that you could, you know.
That has more in common with the Death Star than the Ninja Death Star.
It's just, I don't know. Like, yeah. It would be lethal, but so would 4 knives that the length of those spikes would be, and then you wouldn't need to throw them, you could use them as regular knives. I mean, and then you have the option to throw as a distraction or as a last resort, as we mentioned in the previous video.
A long piece of wood and then the spiky end.
Yeah.
Best weapon ever.
I mean,
So I would not say that shuriken can cause some damage.
give me a source where ninjas were using anything that size. And by the way, shuriken generally are very dubious historical weapons, all right? They might have had spikes that were thrown and everything. If you want a great resource, look up Anthony Cummins. He researches samurai and ninja extensively. I even have his book, actually. He sent it to me. Great guy.
I was under the impression that there's no historical references for ninjas, like, that they exist.
No, there are. Well, not the Hollywood type, but the shinobi. The ninja is a more modern term. But, Book of the Ninja by Anthony Cummins, right? Check it out if you want to learn more about actual historical ninja. He looks to historical sources and translates them, okay? It's a very authentic way to go forward. And lovely little message Anthony wrote for me. Good guy.
You were a weeb before you were a...
I was a wee before I was like, hey, that's all been confessed in my Mall Ninja video, okay? But Anthony actually has some really interesting things to talk about in terms of shuriken, and the classic Hollywood kind of shuriken, the star shuriken, very much more historically dubious than many people realize.
You know, it's about the right size and the weight and proper technique and also where you're gonna hit, all right? But even the
So right size and weight, like, yeah, anything really big and heavy that you throw at someone would be potentially deadly, especially if it has a point or spike, then but doesn't validate it as a good weapon. It can be used as a weapon, but something that makes it good, well, watch my video on good and bad weapons.
shuriken, Hira shuriken.
Because if you haven't seen it, it's like, is there another weapon that can achieve the same purpose but doesn't have as many limitations or problems, or it can even achieve it even better? And so you're looking at something ranged that can kill people, right? That you can throw. And again, there are a lot of other options. So I'll even say throwing knives are way better than that ugly, cumbersome thing. Like, you could, again, for the weight, separate into 4 different knives, and you've got 4 throws instead of 1 thing. Much easier to carry anyway. But that's the thing, we said that in the previous video. And so if you wanted to address my shuriken criticisms. He's not even addressing the argument I made. He's just saying, oh no, they're good, you can make them bigger. But I said you can make them bigger, and then they'd have all these other problems, and he's not addressing those other problems that I mentioned.
Again, mainly for destruction, but in some cases, they put poison on them. So after that, it was, I guess...
You could put poison on darts as well, even really small darts, blow darts and stuff.
Very deadly.
I mean, just because you can put poison on something doesn't make them great. It's like if you can put poison on something that is a lot more convenient to carry, has greater range, easier to use, things like that. Suddenly there's a vastly better option than this other one, which kind of makes this other one pretty crap.
Okay, you got to admit that's still...
That would hurt. Like, oh yeah, that would very likely kill. Yeah, you wouldn't want to be hit by it.
The fact that he got it to stick in is quite impressive.
Well, no, the point of shuriken is so that they really easy to stick in, because it's very hard to not get a point to land, because it's like point, okay, as it spins.
You also mentioned, Shad, in your video that knife throwing can be too much powerful, like you can't cause some serious penetration. That's very wrong.
No, it's wrong with the knives he's holding. Granted, he can do some more damage with his knives, but there's a whole range of throwing knives and a lot of throwing knives. Like, for instance, when he was saying these types are bad, then he compares with a more traditional looking knife, all right? That one was much lighter than the ones he's throwing. They had a much broader point, all right? That type of knife that he was showing, we'll try and bring it up here, is... would be vastly more ineffective against armor, okay? And less chances of doing lethal damage. But Adam's context here is like, no, throwing knives are really deadly because my knives are deadly. But no, your knives don't represent all types of throwing knives.
Because you can, with the proper technique, good weight, like these top dogs.
So, yeah, weight is a big issue. Those are heavy, chunky knives. But like I said, I would hesitate to call them knives. But in terms of throwing, those things, yeah, they're more like throwing spikes, really. And they could pack a punch, absolutely. They'd be more cumbersome to wear. Like, all three of his knives, I'd like to know the weight of them, because if they approach a kilo altogether, that's the weight of a sword. And I'd take a sword over those three knives, absolutely.
You can cause serious penetration. With this, I actually pierced the chainmail. You said you can't, but actually...
Yeah, so I watched his... I watched his video, and it looks like proper riveted mail. When I say proper, the rivets are proper. I don't know what steel it's made out of, okay? I don't know the thickness of the rings. Those are all things to consider. But with a good solid throw that lands... Oh yeah, it looks like those types of knives has a chance to penetrate the mail. But then he tries to throw it against a helmet. And he does penetrate the helmet by like that much at one point, maybe a bit more, but sometimes it doesn't penetrate. The thing is, the metal doesn't sit softly on the skin. They have a big padded coif usually underneath. Sometimes I had another metal helmet I had a metal skull cap underneath the first helmet, okay? Penetrating that, I'll say that much, like, most parts of the body is not going to kill you, especially with armor that if it's domed, it sits off the chest a bit and stuff like that, and there's padding underneath. Just saying, oh, look, I was able to puncture this plate, which we don't even know if the type of steel. It looks like, you know, mild steel, not hard and everything like that. So, one, the demonstrations that you do when you're testing weapons versus armor, it's going to be very disingenuous unless you list, this is the type of steel, this is the thickness of steel, and other things like that, which isn't listed in the video. Because very like against a good solid, even carbon steel, not even hardened, but especially hardened, those thrown knives will not lethally penetrate. And even those types of steel that it has a chance to penetrate, it won't penetrate deep enough to kill. These weapons are basically nullified completely against armor, okay? Unless you're, you know, dead shot from Marvel and all that stuff and can get in the eye slot every single time. But with a running person that's doing this, no. No.
Shad, Deadshot is from DC.
Bullseye! Fine! Bullseye!
It's so simple, because when he throws it, he gets a bullseye every time.
But so does Deadshot.
But he shoots it.
And Bullseye, when he throws stuff, they end up dead, and he like
Deadshot
shooting
shoots.
things. Bullseye throws. Fine. Okay, fine.
Okay, you
I will concede.
I accept that, and I apologise for yelling.
Good.
All right.
No, like, and shields, like a good solid shield nullifies the lethality of knives massively. So I think a lot of my criticisms actually stand about the effectiveness of knives against armor. I will concede his knives specifically seem to be more effective against mail, but these type and many other types of knives would be garbage against mail. They wouldn't get through mail. And also with the level of penetration, depending on the padding underneath, not lethal penetration either.
Use this. We have like a firearms in the 21st century. Right?
Okay, hang on.
Throwing because we developed this way, you know.
Yeah.
Not more for the combative throwing because we don't need to use this. We have.
So he wants people to experience knife throwing in competition, not in a combative way, because you wouldn't use it in the real world because guns exist. But that's not the context of my video. I was talking about knife throwing in the context of medieval style combat, like for role-playing games, for fantasy, but for reading, but also for martial arts and learning historical combat and things.
Have like a firearms in the 21st century, right? You also don't need to use the swords, you know.
But you don't need to, but it's fun to use them. That's the point. So this point is a little confusing. If it's like saying don't study how knives would be used in combat because you would never really use it in combat. Well, I mean, if you had a knife and nothing else, maybe you would. But no, you do it because it's fun and you'd want to learn. And same with swords. Yeah, I get you wouldn't use it. Actually, if you had nothing but a sword, again, preference would be have a gun. But still, if you had to face off against someone with a gun and all you had was a sword and you couldn't run away or get protection, you'd probably use the sword still, and then if you knew techniques of how to use the sword, you would be grateful for that as well. And that's the same with throwing knives, I would say. And there are countries in which you are legally allowed to possess knives and not guns, and so you might want to learn combat knife throwing in that context as well.
So I can tell, like, sword, it's also not practical, these days. That's, again, the similar point. So I would love to see knife throwing going one day, maybe Olympic sport. Because if
that would be cool. I'd like to see actual, longsword as an Olympic sport. That would be awesome.
In our sport, you would
not Olympic fencing, okay? Longsword. There's a difference. So this is the summary in which I think it reveals. I think we already showed this clip as well, but we're at the end and we'll get to see it again. Is that I feel he really misunderstands the context of my video.
I think is knife throwing really useful. Yes, I think for sure.
Okay, so he thinks knife throwing is useful, but what was the context in which I was saying is knife throwing useful in combat? Okay, specifically against other weapons and other weapons that could achieve the same thing that you want the knife to achieve. Are there better options available? But then he says, is knife throwing useful? He thinks it is, but then listen to what he says he thinks knife throwing is useful for.
Because mainly, it gets you out of your house, outside, outdoors. You gotta move. You gotta learn new techniques.
You gotta move.
You gotta move.
You gotta move.
This isn't. No, Adam. This isn't teasing, Adam. Okay, it's becoming a meme because someone else has brought up that point in trying to defend nunchucks. You gotta move. Does seem like the technique of moving might be the fundamental technique of all combat.
Yeah.
I'm starting to. We might need to get someone to research that.
Yeah.
Like if we could get a professor thesis.
Someone smart.
Someone smart.
Someone with a piece of paper with their name on it.
That proves their qualifications. Yeah.
And is an absolute Chad.
Oh, but not.
Well, look, he's a bit of a wild card, but Chad
no.
Chad looks.
No, I've been trying to get him out of this friggin' building for years. We cannot encourage him. Bloody hell, Oz. Don't even say his name.
I already made the call.
Oh, you bastard. So Adam is saying he believes knife throwing is really useful because it gets you outdoors and you get like exercise and things. I wasn't meaning that. I was talking about combat.
Is he calling you fat?
I am a little bit.
No, but he's saying it's great because it gets you outside and moving.
Well, that would be a fair criticism. That's founded on valid logic and evidence. There's evidence of me being a bit chunky on the side.
Horizontally.
I would always prefer that than a video in which doesn't address my points and misunderstands what I was saying.
Yeah. It's like,
Like,
yeah,
he just
that's
said,
my point.
like, Shadowversity is a fat idiot, okay? And look, I am an idiot and I am a bit fat. I was like, okay, he's right. I can't argue.
You're not an idiot. The term I would use is buffoon.
Okay, yeah, but I am capable of moments of idiocy. The smartest people in the world are capable of moments of idiocy.
More often than not, actually.
Yes.
You're gonna meet new people around the world on the competition. You're gonna learn new skills, and like.
So knife throwing is useful. Because, like, what? No, why is it useful in combat? That's the point. And
Why is it useful outside of it, too?
he's saying knife throwing is useful just generally now.
Like I said,
That's not that wasn't my point or discussion.
But outside of it being a sport, in what possible way could knife throwing be useful? Get the knives out
As a distraction, and like what we said in the previous video, there are some few things in which you could get a use out of knife throwing in combat, like as a distraction, last resort kind of stuff. So it's not utterly useless, but it's pretty crap in a lot of situations in comparison to other weapons and other weapons you might want to use. In facing other weapons and other weapons you might want to use.
so much fun.
Okay.
But
Yeah, it is fun, I
pick
agree.
the right knives from the start, because if you will have crap like this, you're not gonna enjoy it at all. You need.
Well, I mean, in my defense, okay, he calls it crap, but I was having fun. I was legitimately enjoying myself throwing these things because it just feels good. I still like them, you know?
Something better.
Okay, so yeah, that's the knife I was referring to before. I was like, you know, that one's armor penetrative ability would be so much worse than... And I would consider that a knife. That looks like a knife.
Like this Osseter or the White Shark by us, Top Dog Wolflund, or you can also use some cheaper versions by United Cutlery. It depends on you, but these are for the lifetime. Amazing knife. And right after that, you have to study tutorials knife throwing. If you're gonna just stand in front of...
To know how to throw, yes, but not to be able to analyze their effectiveness in combat, all right? That's the thing I've studied a lot. Historical combat, okay? The scenarios, the uses of weapons, how that when they are effective, when they're ineffective, all those type of things. And it's from that wealth and years upon years of study and interest, doing it myself and other things like that, gives me a solid enough understanding of the context to be able to analyze many types of weapons in the context when I inject them in. And I don't need to be master at throwing to be able to consider how well would they work, looking at, you know, how great a master can throw and, you know, and what they can achieve, they're useful in range and distance and everything. Like, absolutely you can study these things and get a very solid knowledge, even if you don't know them how to do it perfectly or a master. But I actually have practiced with a lot of different types of weapons. You know, swords are my favorite, of course. And so, no, you don't need all the tutorials to be able to speak authoritatively on things if you have good sources and references to be able to learn from. And you don't, like, yeah, so, but if you want to actually know how to throw, then I agree, tutorials and stuff, but that's not the point or thing of my video.
And throwing randomly, you're not gonna stick it, you're not gonna have good time. So I would start actually...
It's funny, we're cutting all the way back to the beginning. It's like, that was the point of this skit at the beginning. It's like, yeah, I haven't done the tutorials and I suck at throwing. That was the point of, yeah, anyway.
The knife flies straight. That one was used by Japanese samurai.
I actually think because Anthony, when I was talking about the actual type of throwing bladed instruments that some of the shinobi and even samurai use, they are kind of like spikes, okay? And with those spikes, yeah, I think, all right, I haven't confirmed it, but I've already got references that seems to confirm that that might actually be a more common technique from, you know, Japanese sources.
It's very, very useful. So like I said,
because those spikes are more common, I have more in common with what he's throwing than an actual dagger. Because it doesn't look like a dagger.
Guys, let me your opinion in the comment section below.
There we go. That is Adam's video. And look, huge respect to Adam. He approached it, what I feel, yes, in good faith, even though he did misunderstand a lot. But he's a really friendly guy, and I hope he just appreciates the further discussion. And even though I disagree with... gosh, a lot of what he said, but I do appreciate that he's, you know, made the reply video, and good stuff. Thank you for that. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. Of course, I hope to see you in the next video here on Shadowversity as well. So until that time, farewell.